So what we do in this Flux lounge is a variety of things. One, we host things like today. We allow our clients and customers to come down and use the space. We can dial in people from all over the world, and it becomes a sort of collaborative hub. And Vanessa and Nick, our incredible marketing person, has sort of helped us really bring this space to life. And one of the things that we really want to do to sort of be a part of the industry and bringing our friends together, and we're competitors but collaborators, is to kind of tell some stories of how we've done things, open up the floor to debate. And so we've hosted a series of these, and one of them was about sort of immersive storytelling. And this one, because we've just landed our Saudi trade license, hooray, we wanted to sort of give a bit of an explanation of how that happened, why that happened. And we brought two of the best people in the business that can help you do the same if you haven't already. So Mickey and Graham, I'll allow them to introduce themselves in no particular order.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Graham Ellis. I work for UK Government's Department for Business and Trade. My role is really helping UK companies export to the Middle East. I cover the GCC region. But since 2017, most of my work's been focused on Saudi Arabia. I work closely with the embassy teams, and my remit is around the creative industry, so SMEs by and large, and it's in the tourism, sport, culture space. I can say more when we talk in a moment.
Thank you.
Everybody, my name is Mickey Stewart. I'm the Deputy CEO of Arabian Enterprise Incubators, AEI Saudi. We're a consultancy and support services business, and we've been in Saudi for 12 years. And we help businesses and investors on their journey into the kingdom. It's complex. And so we hold the hand of investors and help them in with sort of mobilization strategies, incorporation when it's required, and then thereafter with compliance and a whole host of other things as well to support them along the way. And I came back to the UK hoping to have some slightly less hot weather, 47 degrees, and I've been wet all week. But thank you for choosing.
Yeah, thank you both for coming. So I've been going to Saudi Arabia for the last sort of 15 years, and it's changed an incredible amount. Graham and I met probably 10 years ago, maybe. We had a couple of drinks in the embassy in Saudi Arabia. And obviously, it's hot in the press right now, Saudi Arabia, what's happening there. The streets are paved with gold. There's opportunities galore. That is the case in some instance. In others, it's definitely not. But what I wanted to start off with both of you, again, in no particular order, is what do you think what is the current climate and landscape at the moment economically in Saudi Arabia? How are they doing? How are the big projects doing? And what do you think is most promising? I don't know what everybody does in the room, but like I said, we come from this sort of experiential design background. I presume most people are from SME background. Where do you see the sort of, the opportunities for those sorts of companies and people like us to thrive there? Graham, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I mean, just to set some context, we're talking about a country the size of Western Europe. 35 million Arabs live there. It's a huge country. 60% are under 30. So that gives you a feel, because for me, one of the biggest things I notice when I go there now is the excitement amongst young people for what's coming, what the future holds. And I think of my kids, my kids are out of university, they're all working, but they don't have that same excitement in this country at the moment. Maybe they will from now, but they certainly haven't had. Whereas in Saudi, you really get a feel for that from young people, that they want to be part of this massive agenda. So there are a number of projects, a whole range of projects. I could be spinning plates all day long with the amount of work that's going on. I work with two creative industries trade advisors, one in Riyadh, one in Jeddah. We just can't spin enough plates for all the projects that are going on. So I spend a lot of time going to the kingdom, basically understanding, talking to ministers, talking to the giga projects to see what's happening for real and where the opportunities are for UK. And there are massive opportunities, and these projects are all 20, 30, 40 years long. So talk about a long-term pipeline, and they're real. Most of the projects I see are happening for real. Talk about places like Al and the transformation, even in the last 2 or 3 years. Each time I go there, it's changed again, the road layouts, the arts districts, So these places are moving and moving fast. So there are definitely real opportunities. I don't know anywhere else in the world that's got the scale of projects. It's $1.8 trillion worth of construction underway at the moment. There just isn't enough people to support these projects. They've got lots of international help and they need more help. So for me, when I look around the world, I don't see anywhere else that's got the same opportunities. And I work for UK government, but I've had the same issues within government, which is people sort of keeping Saudi Arabia at arm's length just because of what they've read in the press. That's all changing now. So UK government ministers, and I'm sure it'll be the same with the new regime, will want to be involved with Saudi because it's all about, for the UK economy, it's all about growth. So it's about exporting, it's about the opportunities. So it's a very exciting place. But my overriding message to everyone is you have to go and have a look for yourself. You can get people like me who champion what I'm seeing, what you're seeing, what Mickey's seeing, but you've got to get out there and have a look for yourself, and you will be amazed.
To further that, what Graham was saying, do you think, because, obviously the area that we work in, the sector that I work in, is quite small in terms of creative and working primarily with sort of the cultural asset. Do you think that there is sort of, we've all heard of the NEOMs and the Al Ulas, but is there sort of untapped potential at the moment? You live in Saudi, you know the landscape. Is there untapped potential that at the moment, we don't know about? What are the next things that are coming? What are the things that people can sort of be ahead of the curve?
No, absolutely. I'll answer that in a second if I may. I'm just going to say something up front though, which is what's happening in Saudi is unprecedented in our minds. Probably nothing like this has really happened since the end of the Second World War, the Marshall Plan. This is a complete blank canvas. And so what you've got is this huge population, leadership who are in control. They have a strategy. They've declared that strategy. It's been in the public domain. Capital, to a certain degree. And they have now the consent of the population. And so I've had a couple of conversations in the room already, and those who visited Saudi will know that when you sit alongside a young Saudi, whether you're flying in, flying out, or when you're there, they will just tell you how much they're enjoying tap, and they are leaning into the whole process. And so there is huge transformational change that's taking place a long way away from the gig as NEOM or Western. We're talking property sector. Families who've traditionally lived behind 40-foot walls with grandparents, 20 people to a complex, maybe more. Suddenly they're going, well, actually, I want to go and have a bachelor pad, or I want to have a hen pad. I want to go and live with my girlfriend, my boyfriend, or whatever it is. And so the property market has to map sort of meet that aspiration. Everything is changing. Transport, logistics, everything is changing. So to your point about the other opportunities, I'm going to fly, be a bit rigorous here and fly slightly close to the sun. It's not definitely Chatham House rules here, but so I don't want to get in too much trouble. But we always urge businesses, we're agnostic across all things. We always urge businesses to try and really step back from the giga projects, step away maybe from Neil and Darir and Red Sea Global and Roshan and Kadir, and look at the base economy, and look at Riyadh, look at Eastern Province, Cobalt, Dammam, Taif, Sabah and South, Abba and South. And this, as Graham said, this is a population of 36 million, 20 million Saudis in the labour market, evenly split male, female. So there's huge opportunity in those locations, in the private sector, as much as in the public sector. So there is, and it's a blank canvas. So there's a huge aspiration amongst the youth to run their own businesses very, very quickly with very little experience, but they're picking up very quickly. There's some incredibly educated, they can come on to later on, incredibly educated young Saudis, either onshore or offshore education, who are just waiting to start their own business and be creative and get into tech and whatever it may be. So that's just scratching the surface there. The message of this opening salvo really is about base economy. Don't necessarily get caught in the tractor being Neil, as attractive as it may be. There's so much going on elsewhere, really is.
Like all these things up to questions if people want to speak about things later. But one of the things you did like this, I've been there a long time, I was on as you guys. Obviously, partnerships is important in Saudi. There's big developers that are starting up there. We've got relationships with developers in Dubai that are now moving over there, and more specialist companies. So for people that are sort of wanting to start and dip their toe in the water, is that quite a good way to sort of enter the market? And, you know, what can partnerships in the region do? How can they help you?
Can we start? Go ahead. Yep.
I think it's what we have to be careful is not answering this as if it's a Saudi specific question, because I think it's no different to exporting anywhere, frankly, which is you get people like myself working with government and we facilitate trade missions and we have embassy teams who support people. But most of the companies I know, they've got their own arrangements alongside that. They may have agents. They may have met somebody in a bar in Dubai who's promised them some work. Others who are looking at genuine partnerships. The Saudis like partnerships on the ground anyway, because they want companies that have got a long-term interest there. You know, this is why the whole move to regional HQs, for instance, is about skin in the game. So I think partnership is important, but I think also the ways that you probably work already are important in Saudi. And even though I work for government, I can take a trade mission and people will go off doing their own meetings. They do other things. That's fine by me. That just sits alongside what we're doing. And I would say applies in any country you work in. But yeah, local partnerships must be important because Saudi needs to develop its own talent long term.
Yeah, absolutely. I was on a panel last week at Silverstone for the sports sector, and it was all about partnerships. I had to swim slightly against the tide here and say that a lot of the advice, or one of the key bits of advice that we give as a business, as a consultancy, is don't rush the partnership. You know, depending on what license you're after, trading, service, industrial, manufacturing, whatever it may be, some of them are professional. Specifically, you may be required statutory to have a bar, 25%, whatever it may be. But if you can do it 100% foreign owned, or do it and maintain your independence or autonomy, great, more's the better. And a lot of Saudis would agree with you on that. So don't rush into those partnerships. It's not because there's anything malign in there. It's just that misalignment can quite often happen. And, you know, Saudis love them, great friends of mine. I'm a guest in their country. But if, you know, they always say yes. They never say no. They're always smiling and always say yes, never say no. So if you're talking about discussing a partnership, yes, all the way. And then when it gets the brass tacks where the rubber hits the road, there's a misalignment because they never really understood what you were after and you didn't really nail it down. So, you know, you can get some fantastic partnerships, very successful partnerships. What I would say though is to Graham's point about talent, you know, knowledge transfer is really, really important. And to go back up to the strategy point of, you know, the leadership for Vision 2030, knowledge transfer, human capital development, education. You know, we're sitting at the center of the universe potentially here in terms of, you know, creative industries and so on. They want you've got. So as you develop your mobilization, your strategy, your plan for market entry, and you have partners and clients, you know, part of your strategy should be about knowledge transfer and taking whatever chunk of that young demographic and saying, look, let's train you guys up and let's bring you in. I mean, you're going to be mandated if you're incorporating in the country. And we can talk about that maybe later on if you want, but if you are incorporating and getting a license and a commercial registration, you're going to be mandated to have a percentage of Saudi Arabians anyway. And rather than having somebody who sort of sits in the corner and does nothing because they have no experience, you know, you absolutely say, right, here's the plan, 2-5-year plan, whatever it may be, to do a knowledge transfer. And then the Saudis, private sector will love you for it, but equally the ministries are going, exactly what we want, because they want people out of the public sector, they want them into the private sector and trained up. So that, I think the UK has a huge amount to add in that regard. We're talking tech today, but also in the professional services space as well. But that actually takes us into the next question. I mean, obviously the UK government and UK businesses have been very active in Saudi Arabia for a long, long time. And when when you're doing bids, it tends to be a lot of British companies that are involved. You know, we do delegations that I've been in part of, and in this agency, another agency. But when you were talking about, you know, that the Saudis are very interested in the UK, why is that? Why do we get on so well? Why do they want us there? You know, there's a lot of companies that are going out there. You know, what are the strengths that UK companies have that they're looking for, and kind of what industries do they relate to? Well, you know, there's the historical relationship, goes back, you know, many decades. There's the Saudis' love of London and the UK. Indeed, the event I was at a couple of weeks ago in the city, the Minister of Investment himself said, most Saudis see London as a second home. They love that. And this is what I get slightly frustrated about as being a Brit living abroad, is the UK's got so much to offer, and the talent in this room, and whether you're a startup SME or bigger, UK's got so much to offer. When you're sitting offshore, you kind of see the UK beating itself up. Not in a very sort of friendly relationship with itself at the moment. But of course, the rest of the world loves it, and they want it. They want what you've got. They want talent. They want the expertise you've got, and they want you to share it with them. And the last thing I'll say, kind of Graham, is that the recent Great Futures event that took place in Riyadh, the UK really got the jump on many other nations in commercial terms because it strengthened that partnership. And I know for a fact the French and the Germans afterwards were going, "Wow, UK, you did really well. That was a fantastic week." And it was a fantastic week, oversubscribed, and Saudis, absolutely all senior ministers were there leaning into the whole thing. And it was about partnerships, long-standing partnerships. And obviously, Graham's colleagues in government mandated to sort of drive it forward, but they're handing over the baton to people in this room to take it forward.
Just, I'd add a few things. I think one of the attractions of UK as well is the creative industries. I think the innovation, the creativity is widely recognised around the world, and it's something the Saudis want. As Mickey said, they know the UK market well. Saudis are very well read as well. They know what's out there and what's going on, and they travel a lot and they visit different installations, and they can see what's available. So I think that puts us ahead. Also speaking English, frankly. So when I'm working in Al Ula, although the French are dominant there, the French government are certainly dominant, they like the fact we speak English. So even simple things like that are important in terms of the business language. But one thing I will add to that was we had, and working for UK government, it's all about great, the Great Campaign, Great Britain, all the rest of it. And I take a slightly different view, which is we have to be more humble than that. The Saudis have got enough money to bring in whoever they want. And if I look across their various sectors, so when we did the Great Campaign, it was about, let's bring our architects in, tell the Saudis about architecture, bring our cultural heritage companies in who don't understand museums and visitor and sports companies as well. All three of those areas, I could argue, the Saudis are ahead of us. If I look at what's happening in Neon and some of the designs that are being put forward, that will stretch any of our architects in the UK. So it's not just about going to Saudi and saying, here's our UK offer. You've got to work differently and smarter there. So I can use architects as an example. Jeff, I can see Jeff there in the sports field. When you're working on Olympics and World Cups, 4 years out, you're doing this, 3 years out. You've got a year if you're lucky in Saudi for a big event. And it's the same in the cultural heritage space. We're lucky in London, in some of the regions, because we've got these major museums. We get 6 million visitors going to them, tourist visitors visiting London. We do school trips, family trips. They haven't got that in Saudi. They haven't got that culture. So if you're going to build museums there, you need to be thinking about the immersive experiences and different ways of getting people in. So going to Saudi and going to the Middle East, you do have to think about the market. And I always say when I'm talking to government is, I don't like this term great, because there are plenty of other countries that are good at things as well. So we have to be a bit more humble. We have to listen to what they're looking for. When I go and visit the Giga project, most of the teams running all these projects are international teams. They're all experts. You've got John Pagano in Red Sea who developed Canary Wharf. These guys know what they're doing and they know the market. There's no point me going and talking to John Pagano and saying, what do you need? Because he'll think, well, I've already got what I need. So the conversation for me is very much, where are the gaps? Where can we help you? And I think for you, it's the same conversation, really. Think about where you can actually help, whatever the project is. Don't just assume because you're coming from the UK that you're in. You've got an advantage, but...
It's a really important point about relationships, establishing and nurturing those relationships, and the humility behind it as well. This event a couple of weeks ago was a sporting event. There was lots of chat about Saudi PIF owning Newcastle Football Club. and the fact they dropped 300 million quid on it. Great. The next panel came up was about esports. And the chair of the UK esports panel, Chester King, said, I don't want to upset people, but nobody wants to talk about esports necessarily in the UK. And of course, he wears an esports cap. But he said the Saudis dropped £1.6 billion on esports purchases in the UK. 5 times what they paid for Newcastle, but nobody's talking about it. And it's the esports World Cup going on at the moment. A UK manufacturer made the esports cup, to say nothing of the content and the marketing and all the other creative stuff that goes with it. So yeah, you're getting under the skin of it and really creating a really strong relationship with a Saudi sort of partner or advocate is really important. But equally, I have to say this, because we put on our slide deck quite often, we hear all the time, I met a prince. There are 40,000 princes. Okay, I've got an exclusive deal. Okay, maybe that was a bad idea.
You touched on both of you then the kind of nuances of working there and the kind of, the methods, how they're potentially to get in there. And like you said, Saudi's a big place. Going from Riyadh to Al Ula is night and day. They don't even look like the same. I mean, Al Ula is one of the most breathtaking places I've ever been in my life. Riyadh is one of the most breathtaking places, but for very, very different reasons. It is moving at such a rate that quite a lot of it is being left behind. When you come out the airport and you've been on a flight that gets there at 1 a.m, I mean, it's every man for themselves to get a taxi. Going to the new exhibition space when we were coming back from there, it's like Mad Max. People don't use the roads. It's just crazy. But one of actually touching on that kind of nuance thing, how quickly things are changing, and there is still a certain level of apprehension. People going to Saudi for the first time, they don't really know, are you supposed to shake hands? There's no check sheet of what you are and aren't supposed to do. I've been to Saudi, to Riyadh specifically, during Ramadan more than once. And I can remember being there 10, 12 years ago, and it was, there was nothing to do. You couldn't eat, you couldn't drink, you didn't really talk. There was no music. I was in Saudi last year in Ramadan, and I walked into the hotel lobby that I always stay in, and I know the guy behind reception, we always talk about football, and he shouted to me, Alex, and I was kind of, I didn't want to get in trouble, and he threw me an apple, and I said, I can't eat this, and he said, no, I can't, you can. And kind of, it was such a small thing, but I was like, oh, wow, it's changed. It is changed. But what are the kind of nuances in terms of working procedures? I'm going to take you through one of our projects that kind of shows some of the pitfalls, but, what are the things that you guys find having worked there, or that you see companies, the mistakes that people make, or the things to follow, or the kind of differences between working anywhere else in the world and working in Saudi?
So I kick off. You've probably got more than me. I think for me, things are changing fast because there's an appreciation that they need to change if they're to bring in the international support that they are. So, for instance, still going through procurement processes is pretty clunky, certainly with the big projects, and certainly when we're talking to the SME community, there is a nightmare filling in the appropriate procurement forms. But that's changing. And I know, even talking to people like Red Sea Global, that they're looking at adapting and changing to simplify and make their processes, and they're more willing to help. Exactly. And it was the same with the listen, it was not that long ago. I could be getting on a flight, even though I'm sponsored by government, still waiting for my visa to come through. And now it's literally 3 or 4 minutes online. So they do recognise the need to change, but they're not there yet. And I think it's the same when you talk about things like payments, and we can get onto that later as well. It's still got a little way to go, but bear with it, because it is definitely changing. It just reminds me how Dubai was 25 years ago. That's where Dubai was, and now everybody thinks of that as a place where you can easily do business. It's much more user friendly for Brits, etc., etc. I think Saudi will get there. It's not quite there yet. Next.
To match your Apple story, my son came out to visit me just in November from school and said, Metallica are playing tomorrow. Can we get tickets? I said, a fat chance. Went online, we got tickets, 3 of them, 30 quid each, and we were rocking it out to Metallica the next night with 30,000 other people. Never thought I'd be doing that at age 50. It was absolutely brilliant. And the Saudis were, totally immersed in the whole thing. And Calvin Harris was playing somewhere else, and 6 others, and DJs doing their thing, and EDM lounge and all the rest of it. Amazing. I mean, and has anybody here been to Middle East? Okay, so if you go down to the EDM space, where there are 6 things all going on at once, I mean, my eyes, I've been around the world and back again. My eyes were out in stalks. You're talking about some of the controversial stuff that you read in the papers here in the broadsheets. I'm not going to go there, but some of the controversial stuff the broadsheets always bring up. It was a completely open, free space down the EDMs in Middle East. It's it'll completely swims against the tide what you will hear or read. It's a totally free location, and people feel comfortable there. So, but in terms of pitfalls and stuff, at AEI, we I won't go into them all, but we talk about the sort of 5 Ps for business. We're a business that we are based in Saudi full time. 60% of our people are Saudi, and so we're bona fide Saudi business. But we talk about patience for this room. You've got to have strategic patience with your partners, with the opportunities, then with the procurement process, and with payment. Sure, we'll come back to it. Presence, you've got to be there. You've got to be in the kingdom. You can't do it fly in, fly out. You can't be offshore, even from Dubai. The Saudis want you to spend your hard-earned riyals in the kingdom and pay your taxes in the kingdom. Happy for you to come back to the UK or your home nation, but don't go and spend the riyals in Dubai or Abu Dhabi or somewhere else, Qatar. So presence. Partners, we've spoken about. Make sure, do you need to? Payment is still a challenge for all the SME community. But planning, planning is a big one. So sit down with people in the know and who have, tactical understanding of the market. And AEI, we're very proud to say that we helped Engage Works establish and get their license in the kingdom. And we're still going through the sort of tail end of that at the moment with Engage. But understanding what your Saudization commitment is, what you are, depending what activity you have on your license, will determine what percentage of Saudis you have to have in your business. Clearly, you're going to go after recruiting Saudis. How easy is it to recruit? It's tough. It's even tougher to retain. This young Saudi population are determined to climb the ladder very, very quickly and find the brand they want to end up with, or indeed start their own business. So retaining a Saudi is tough. What tax are you paying? LLC versus branch, all that sort of stuff. Plan, and get it right from the early stages. And if at all possible, and this is the last thing I'll say, is just try and remain cash positive, particularly in the SME community. It's tough, Do you want to cover payment now, or?
Well, what I thought might be quite good, as soon as you are an Engage Work, so I'm going to show you an Engage Work project. But what we've got here is a kind of start to finish, and we can kind of use as a narrative. Feel free if you want to jump in for a project that we've just opened. So we were working with the PIF. We're hoping to work with them more. If you don't know, the PIF is a public investment fund. They're the most primarily known for being the sport guys that are buying Ronaldo and everybody else. And they approached us through several other people that we'd worked with to create what you see on the screen there, an immersive experience about the early life of the Prophet Muhammad. So this is what we very first started on, day one, from start to finish. They wanted to do it in 6 months. And very quickly, as we started to develop with them, what was possible, we started to go bigger and better and show them, some of the possibilities of the things that we could do. And very often, and maybe this is a good point to stop and for you guys to jump in, is it's all well and good just saying, I've got to be careful because my COO's over there looking at me, our new COO. The way that I approach projects, there is what the brief is never what ends up happening. So they'll say, well, I can give you this as, for instance, a project that's going to sit in a town square, so next to the Quba Mosque in Medina, and it will house about 100 people an hour, and we want to be open in 6 months. So I said, yeah, of course we want to do it. Of course we want to do that, turnkey project, knowing that's not going to be what happens, because they go way bigger and it drags out longer. Now, obviously, there's risk involved with that because you're saying yes to a project quite a lot of the time that is not possible. It's not possible to do those things. Some of the things that are done there at lightning pace, very often people say, you get on the roller coaster and see where you end up. But you guys must have tales of these sorts of things as well. But I guess what are what the challenges with that, what the pitfalls of that for SME companies, saying, I think Saudi, we would say yes to everything and see where we go, but that is not a sustainable business model for Saudi or for any SME. So I wouldn't encourage it.
Okay. No, the reason is because you
Yeah.
so you know who you're talking to, you know what's likely.
Yeah.
I think if you're going fresh to the market, that's a big risk to go in and promise the world. So I think you do need to be a little bit, but it goes back to the earlier point I was making about talking and understanding what they're really looking for. And it all comes back to that relationship building, that engagement. And once they trust you, then I think you can have that sort of more mature conversation. But I'd be nervous about going in saying promise everything, because things can change very quickly, as we all know.
Yeah. So I think there's the budget cycle in the year, obviously, that comes out of PIF, and ambition has never scaled back. Budgets always are, and so you sort of watch that cycle with businesses coming into the kingdom, where eyes and stomachs, not necessarily the same relationship, and the request overreaches, and the budget overreaches what the budget has on offer, and so with your negotiating strategies, put some extra cloth into it because it will be trimmed, but know what your point is that you absolutely need to for your ROI, whatever, but or for your revenues, for your bottom line rather. But the getting a deposit up front is really, really important. Getting a payment up front. So start at 50%, maybe get yourself down to 10%, and 10% of the contract value is good. If that's good enough for you, then great. That's a really important sort of strategy to have, and then you're cash positive, because you don't want to. And I think it's indicative. Last week somebody was saying Saudi's in trouble. We've heard that stuff is being cut back and curtailed in all sorts of places, including the gigas. It's not. It's recalibrating. The Sovereign Wealth Fund have looked, popped the lid on budgets and salaries and all sorts of different things. Gone too much. Actually, we've got some deliverables: Expo, potentially the World Cup, Trojena, Winter Games, to say nothing of the base economy stuff that I was discussing earlier on. So they're recalibrating. It's not the end. They're recalibrating, because now that things are being taken seriously. I'm not saying they don't take it seriously before, but they're delivering that. Budgets are tightening, but there's still huge opportunity there. But just make sure that your negotiating strategy and your payment milestones are built around deliverables, as opposed to vagaries, because that's where you're into the souk mentality, where they'll start to talking about it earlier on. The souk mentality, where they've had decades of bartering, and they love it, and they're better than we are.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, and one of the things, there's an architect in the room, I think, but when I worked in a design agency, we used to follow REBA stages. And I think primarily Saudi and potentially the rest of the Middle East is kind of destroying those REBA stages. What tends to happen, and you are in a tech agency after all, we can bring in things like AI to help us. So we employed AI to help us on this, to get it right for us and move quickly. What tends to happen on the projects that we come into is that there's a discovery phase, that what we try and do is split them out. So say, pay us for a discovery phase, and we come and spend, 6 to 8 weeks with them, work with them, get the brief right, get the budgets in place, be realistic about it. We're still getting paid, we're on the clock. They're happy because they see things moving. And at the end of that, they say, okay, fantastic, that's a real project now. You've still got 6 weeks to get it done. But, that's sort of the nicest way to do it in an ideal world, how we'd want to work. So then talking about how sometimes things are ready and things are not ready in Saudi, and looking at Riyadh, this is Medina. So they knew they wanted to do the project, but the PIF in conjunction with the Medina local council and authority. But I went out there and they didn't have a clue where they were going to put it. So yes, we want to do this incredible project, but they just had building sites and rubble everywhere. And sorry, this is jumping along. We eventually found a site, and we found a local, I can't get it to stop. We found a local team that would work with us to deliver it. So we were talking about local partners, but also working with other people that had, experience in the region. This is annoying. There is me standing where we're supposed to put this thing in 3 months' time. thinking I may have bitten off more than I can chew here, and I've got to come back and tell people like our creative director who's just walked in at the right time, this is going to be a problem. So, one of the next areas I wanted to move on to, leading on from this one, is, where is Saudi in those places? We see places like Neom talking about they're going to do 100 kilometers of 100-meter high glass. Now we're told it's 2 meters, it's 2 kilometers long. The infrastructure, are these giga projects and these, incredible opportunities, of which there are plenty, is the infrastructure there, or is there still a way to go to support those ambitions?
I think you've got 4 or 5 big giga projects. Neom's the one everyone focuses on because it's probably the hardest to get your head around. I've been to the Neom exhibition in Riyadh a few times. I still can't understand and get my head around what they're actually thinking about. But I've also been up to Neom and I've seen the excavation work and the dumper trucks and all the rest of it. So it's happening. I don't think it will happen on the scale that's been originally, or the ambition was, but I do think it will happen. I think what it's also doing is it's putting Saudi right at the top of the whole sustainability agenda internationally. So they do more than just doing the buildings. They also want to be part of the international debate in all sorts of areas. So I think it will serve that purpose. But I'm not clever enough to get my head around what a smart city of the future really will look like. And just, as I say, visiting the exhibition, somebody's making millions out of the models that they're creating. And architects are being paid for the competitions that they're involved in, so that they're winning work and they will do stuff. But then I go to Red Sea, which is also a pretty remote area, Red Sea Global, and that's just, I couldn't believe how much progress was happening, and the mile after mile of, growing all the plants that they need and the islands being developed. So you go to for me, part of my role is seeing what's happening for real. There's no point in me trying to, persuade companies to come out to Saudi or go, work on these projects if it's not happening. So I've been to all the giga projects. Qadir is now definitely well underway, and that will be the largest entertainment and sport facility, which is just outside Riyadh. Riyadh will double in size. So as Mickey said earlier, it's not just about the giga projects. So this stuff is going on. Al Ula, you've seen it as well. The first time I went there 3 or 4 years ago, it was a shanty town. You couldn't find anywhere to stay. And now you go there, it's just absolutely fantastic what they've been doing. A stunning place. So the whole tourism drive behind all these projects is really important. But I think Neom will happen to a degree. But ultimately, to the dream of having this 100-odd kilometre line across that area, which is a pretty remote area at the moment, but they're looking ultimately at a sort of Silicon Valley type. That's what they want for that part of Saudi Arabia. And I wouldn't rule it out. All these projects are long-term projects. They talk about Red Sea and Neom being the size of Wales, the size of Belgium. The guys in Red Sea said to me, that's this project. You wait for the next one. It's 5 times the size of this. So I can't even get my head around what they're doing now, let alone what's coming. So they've got very long-term ambitions. So Neom may not happen immediately, and nothing's going to have been finished by 2030. These are all 30, 40, 50-year projects. So who knows? We may not be around when they do finally get there with that one. What do you think?
I think, I come back to our first P, which is patience. Patience with these projects. They're going at their pace. Clearly people feel the pinch on the ground. They're under a lot of pressure, and people working long hours in the expat or the local community to deliver this stuff. But patience is really important. Things like Neom is waiting for governing law to be established. Is it going to be a state within a state? We've been waiting for that for years. Still going on. That'll determine what Neom really looks like. Beyond that, I would also talk about sort of future-proofing these things and sustaining these things. Red Sea Global is beautiful, and John Boyano has done a great job. In the same way that Derriere is fantastic, and Jerry Anzarello and his team have done an amazing job. But will some of particularly the Red Sea, will it be sustained by a global population? They're going to keep coming back, or will they come once and then go somewhere else, or go back to where they used to go? So I think, these things sort of crystallize and materialize. The strategy will start to really sort of be adjusted, and the Saudis are super sharp, and they'll work it out that actually we might need to scale that back a bit in order to make that sustainable, for future generations. And they are talking about Vision 2040, 50 to 60. But they're also, so I'm slightly meandering, stream of consciousness, but at the moment, $85 a barrel for oil is what's required for the country at the moment. That's sort of the point that's healthy. But they also need investment. So they are looking for FDI. So it ain't just all about Saudi capital. So they are looking for foreign investors. The Neom Inward Investment team have an office here in London now. I think they have one in New York. I was in Hong Kong when they were out there, and the Chinese were going, right, we're going to get our hands on some Saudi capital, and the Saudis were going, right, we're going to get some hands on some Chinese capital. So but that's part of the strategy. That's not a surprise to the Saudis. It's blended, and if they need to shrink in the gigas, they'll shrink. But I keep coming back to that point about the base economy, and something like, for example, the Saudi Cup, the horse race. It's just a fabulous. If you haven't been, I thoroughly recommend you go. It's a fabulous couple of days. Not least because there are sort of no fights in the car park like there would be at Aintree or Ascot, but it's just a real celebration of Saudi culture, and the British team. There's a lot of British team behind it to make it work, and they're doing a knowledge transfer to make it work. Middle East, likewise, British businesses and organisations and supply chain behind that to make it work, and these sort of things where the creative industries are involved, and that's more back towards the centre and Riyadh and where the local community can really get involved in it. 500,000 turn up to Middle East. It's 500,000 Saudis going through Middle East, and they love it.
I just want to skip on to where we ended up with the project, because it did end up happening, but a kind of nice segue, because I want to leave some time for questions. My point with showing this was it ended up being a world-class project that we always knew it had the potential to be. And I guess, it comes with pitfalls working in Saudi. There's problems, as there is anywhere, problematic clients, challenging clients. But I've worked in London. I've worked with, I'm not going to say which institutions, but big museums. I used to work in the music industry. No more challenging than that. In terms of, people all say to me, in my old agency, my creative director used to bang on to me all the time, we cannot be at the beck and call to these Saudi clients. And I said, just take out Saudi. It's the same, right? This has been someone's lifelong dream to create these things, and they put you in the driving seat of doing it. I guess the thing that I say to the team when we deliver these projects is, where else in the world would we get to deliver the level of project like this that we do? And arguably there isn't many places. Dubai, yes, not so much anymore unless it's brand money. But these cultural projects, the sporting projects, there's a lot of money being spent on sporting experiences. So we're having a great time doing some stuff there. We've got our trade license. So in kind of conclusion, we'll open up some questions from both of you. I just wanted to give you the opportunity to say to people in the room how you can help if they're about to go on that journey, and just kind of any last words of advice or any pitfalls. So over to you both, and then we'll open some questions.
I suppose a few ways that I can, or government can help. Well, obviously, firstly, I do a sort of weekly note of what I'm seeing happening around the region, which goes out now to about, 800 or 900 businesses, plus 150 people in Whitehall, because I'm keen to make sure government understands what's happening as well. Because it is phenomenal just what's going on and what's happening, and on a regular basis. So in terms of information intelligence, we send stuff out on that. But I also use it to add in any trade delegations that we're taking, or just events that I see happening around the region. So the government doesn't support all the events that are happening in Saudi Arabia, but it's used.
It's been amazing.
We've had some good delegations, and one thing government can do, of course, is it usually can get access to the key decision makers. So you can go through a few years of business development work, especially with the size of some of these organisations, and never quite getting to the right people. We tend to be able to get to the right people. We work closely with Mickey and AEI as well in terms of helping companies understand the landscape, but also flagging up the events that we're seeing happening also, because, say you're thinking of going to Saudi in November, it's always worth knowing what events are on in November, because there's likely to be other like-minded people around. And also the Giga project and all the other major projects are also at a lot of these events and shows as well. So it's another way of getting access to some of the key people that you want to meet. You've got things like Cityscape coming up in November, which is all the master plans, all the big developers, all the projects that they're involved in. They'll have teams on their stands. It's not just what's happening in Saudi. In London, you'll have the World Travel Market in November at the Excel. All the big Giga projects have a big stand there. Yes, it'll be the sales team that are on the desk, but behind the scenes, you've got the Ministry of Investment and other key players as well, and they're often keen to talk to people who are interested. So it's not just what's happening in the kingdom, it's also what's happening in the UK and elsewhere that may be of interest. And that's also how you engage and you develop that relationship. You don't have to just be going to Saudi, important though that is. It may be that you're spotting other events and things they're involved in. Mickey talked about the sports event at Silverstone. There were a number of events actually, weren't there? There was one at Stamford Bridge, there was one at the Emirates. So the Saudis are in London a lot, especially over the summer months when it's too hot to be in Saudi. So it is about thinking of your plans and strategy to engage. Some of it will be in the kingdom, but some of it may well be here in the UK. Mickey?
I would add one to that list. So there's a couple. There's FII in November around all Cityscape and all that sort of stuff. Quite a big price tag attached to FII, I think, but everybody will be there. But the big one for this room potentially is Leap in February next year. Leap is the largest tech fair or conference on the planet because it's Saudi. And it can be very frustrating, not least, getting a taxi there and taxi out, or, then they change the venue because it just keeps growing. But, everybody is there for that week in the tech space. So definitely put that in your diary. In terms of how AI can help, as I said, we're delighted to have helped engage on their journey and continue with their journey, including sort of the steady state compliance thereafter once you've set up, because there's a myriad of stuff. But I would just, AI we're set up to give you that tactical, practical advice on the ground with the really complex nitty gritty issues. Excuse the pun, the regulatory environment is built on shifting sands. It does change, and we find out on X, or we find out on Instagram before we find out from anywhere else. So we have our finger on the pulse and know what you need to do and what you don't need to do. And I won't go into the detail, but the regional headquarters mandate as of the 1st January this year is an example of that. A lot of SMEs have been scared off by that, but there are ways and means to deal with it. So that tactical, practical advice, having that support as you come into the market. And we talk about sort of going through the gears of first and second gear, light touch, frequent entry, sort of third and fourth gear, boots on the ground, establishing relationships and nurturing relationships and winning stuff, and then gears sort of 5, 6 when you incorporate. But it's just because you won one contract suddenly doesn't mean you're off to the races for the rest of your time in Saudi. It's not. You've got to work at it. So persistence, just keep at it. Stay close to it. I think the final thing I'll say is that Saudis love to do business with. I think Graham's already said it. Love to do business with people they like and trust. But also, there's an awful lot on their windshield. Everybody is coming. Not everybody. So many people are coming to Saudi, and they are just constantly having people on the windshield. Either they're asking for people, or people appear on the windshield, and they will say yes, and you'll have their attention for the amount of time that you're in front of them, and then you'll go past, and you're in their rearview mirror. And the next person's coming in, and that's MBS right down to anybody for that matter. So you've just got to keep being present, persistence, be there in the kingdom, and say, look, we're here, we're committed. We're not commuting, we've committed to the market. And the Saudis will like you for that and trust you for that. And that's how you'll develop those partnerships that are really important.
Thank you. Do we have any questions?
Yeah. Absolutely. So I want to say thank you to your excellent engage works, but it's great event, and great thank you for sharing your insights. My name's Richard. I'm building an AI company called Trilliums with Marek. We build and put in place interactive avatars. And thank you also to Rich for having brought us into Flux as a recently new partner to Flux. So we're excited about that. This is possibly a slightly antithetical question to what you guys are doing and talking about, but I just wondered, from a slightly very selfish perspective, we're a startup, so we don't have loads of resources. How feasible is it to sell into the Middle East, into Saudi, without needing to go and set up base there as well? Is it? Well,
Shall I go with this? I mean, I know say in terms of the trade missions you're doing as well. So startups typically get sponsored by universities and those sort of programs where you've got a particular offering AI. You're getting the cake, that sort of space. And the tech zones, and they will say, right, we look what you have. You're a startup. Here's your license, and they'll try and help you with capital and find you either get all about family offices or institutional funds. And if they like what you have, they'll bring you in, and it's a very quick process as a startup. Now, of course, what they want from you is ultimately in the end, made in Saudi, and they want that human capital development as well. Because this is a strategy that goes out 100 years. This isn't flash in the pan stuff. So, and I think, segueing, so it's a great, on a trade mission where the UK PLC can assist with introductions to universities and sell some clients.
Yeah, and we've got the bit I didn't add as well was since Great Futures, the event a couple of months back, there's a lot more focus on Saudi Arabia within government now as well. Obviously, we're still waiting for the new government to determine the way it wants to move forward. But for any government in the UK, it's about growth. So if you want to grow, you're going to have to be looking at exporting. Saudi is one of the key markets. So we haven't gone through that in detail yet with the new government, but that's what we're expecting. But there's certainly more. If I'm honest, I felt like a bit of a lone wolf over a few years, actually, because I was keen to go and I was interested in going and I'd spend time out there. Now there's a whole number of Whitehall officials that are similarly interested and getting engaged with Saudi Arabia. So you will see more presence and more input from government. You'll also see that within the embassy teams. And we've got trade advisors in most sectors who can also help and advise. So we can easily introduce you to them. In fact, I guess you guys will circulate our details, will you? I'm very happy if you circulate my details because I can help facilitate introductions to the embassy teams or some of our colleagues in Whitehall who cover the areas that you cover if I don't cover them. So you've certainly got government support. Alongside that, as I say, we take out trade delegations. There would be a trade delegation going out to LEAP and some of the other major events. There's a big entertainment, amusement event expo in May each year, I think it is. So we always have a lot of UK companies that want to go for that. As I said, you've got Cityscape coming up and you've got the hotel show coming up where architects, interior designers go. So there are events that cover most sectors and we can keep a handle on that and we can tell you what's coming up, whether we're taking a trade delegation ourselves and that you might want to be part of, or just that there are events going on that we're not sponsoring or behind, which you may want to, as I say, if you're in town that week or that month, then that's a good time to be there. So I think there's a lot of things that we can do to help support entry to the market. But just remember as well, the regional HQ bit, at the moment, the focus is very much on if you're working on the PLF projects, isn't it? It will no doubt move from that. There is plenty of other work going on as well. So the usual way of working through partners or through contacts that you've got.
Yeah, I was going to say that
it's not just it's not
just doing projects there for 10 years. So, there's ways and means to support other people. There's lots of companies here that are established there, getting with them, big out contractors or people that are taking on the big licenses to build these things and deliver these things or take on those big contracts, partner with them here and help them go over there.
Yeah.
And it's always like, we get referrals all the time. We help somebody with a license or set up and they go, right, okay, we can't do this alone. We're going to create a consortium or JV, but they will certainly say, look, these guys are brilliant in London. You need to be here as well. And they make an introduction. And you suddenly have this sort of group of British firms or international firms who create an overall capability that Saudis want. And I was to our point, I don't know if there are any other AIers in the room, but there are a lot of people, I'm slightly glad there are a lot of people who talk about AI and don't know very much. I suspect you're one of a very small group of people who know exactly what they're talking about when it comes to AI And, those experts who are delivering AI as opposed to just talking about it, get yourself into the market and get yourself in the windshield of the Saudis and say, they're all talking hyperbole. This is how it actually makes a difference. This is the delivery. This is where the rubber hits the road. And then the Saudis will go, come in.
Mm-hmm. It's great. And Greg, we'd love to hear more about how we might apply to be part of trade delegation. And no problem at all. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much for the insights. I think it's been incredible. A lot of it has focused around tech. Now, I'm part of a startup that is more of a functional food space. And the regulations around food generally tends to be quite intense. My question is twofold. One, in terms of some of the regulations around food, and particularly halal, the UK versus the GSO are very different right now. How are we working to try and consolidate that? How can functional food brands get into that space in an effective and cost-effective manner? That's one. And the second, as I mentioned, we're a startup, but both myself and my co-founder are female. Now, I've been to Saudi a couple of times, and I know there is still that gender divide. How much of that is that moving forward, especially when you're looking for partners? Because quite a lot of the business space is still very male, and there's still very much that, should I say, rift in terms of engaging with solely female founders. So what sort of solutions and opportunities will there be to overcome that? And finally, in terms of the trade visits, I know there are lots of food festivals. I think FoodX, for example, is a big one within Saudi. How do we get to be part of that, should I say, consolidated team that goes along? Something like that. So those are my three.
I mean, food isn't my area of expertise, but I have colleagues who do the same sort of role as me internationally, not just focus on Saudi. And I think we've got a creative advisor in Riyadh as well. So if you give me your details, I can certainly put you in touch with the right people to talk to about the various events and the various activities. In terms of talking about yourself as a female traveling to Saudi, I mean, this used to be something that was raised a lot by companies with women traveling. I don't hear it as much these days because the country has changed out of all recognition in recent years. And many of the giga projects, actually, and many of the big projects are led by women. Yes, there are still many males in certain areas. Sport's a good example, actually, but it's the same here. So things are changing and changing fast because they've got the talent. And the women I've met who've been leading some of these projects aren't there for any tokenistic reason. They know what they're doing. And that's partly also because of Saudi bringing in international support for all these projects, which is a mix of men and women. It's the people with the right skills. So yes, they've traveled a long way and they've still got a long way to go, let's be honest. But everything I'm seeing is really positive in terms of the changes. And certainly women who lead businesses from the UK who are on trade delegations, I've not heard any issues or concerns that people have raised. It's the same message that I said right at the start. You've got to go and have a look for yourself. And I think very quickly you'll realise that if you're bringing the right products, if you've got the right skills that they're looking for, that's what they're after.
I think as well, I mean, you live there, so you can answer this better. But from my perspective, going there and sort of dealing with, middle management, project managers, directors of agencies, directors of companies, or people that are indigenous population. Saudi was very smart to educate its youth, 10 years ago, very, very well. And a big chunk, bigger than a male chunk, was a female population. So now, certainly in the projects that we're working with, most of the project managers are female. There's still the kind of gender gap right at the very top, but that's globally rather than just Saudi. So, like I said, I'm only speaking for how much it's changing. The Hotel Apple incident I was telling you about the last time I was there, it was the Ladies World Cup was on, and it was Ramadan still, but the whole lobby had big screens like this with the female World Cup and was all ladies sitting watching it during Ramadan. Now, that wouldn't have happened 10 years ago, and it happened then.
Deal with the first question, sort of same sort of space in terms of the startup AI stuff. Get an advocate, get a sponsor, could be university in the food security space, that sort of thing. Great place to start, as Graham says, with the UK government, DBT, Trade Mission, something like that. The DBT team in Riyadh is about 30 strong. I think it's the biggest DBT team in the world for our embassy. So yeah, they're well placed to support you on that and get yourself in front of the Saudis and say, look, this is what we've got, and they'll love me for it. In terms of females, hey, my wife flies back tonight from Riyadh with her CEO. She's in healthcare. She's a program director. She's coming to see a UK business. They're coming in together. She's in a rarefied environment. She's a British female in a pure Saudi business. She loves it. She doesn't speak Arabic, so there's a challenge. The males will tend to, when it gets a bit difficult, go off and speak Arabic, but behind, and her name will come up in conversation. She sort of says to her pals, "What are they saying about me?" But she loves it, and they're incredibly welcoming, and she's there for a reason. To Graham's point, and she's looking forward to staying in Kingdom and driving things forward. To Graham's point about sort of senior leaders and also leadership as opposed to middle management, of which there are lots of female. Well, let's start. AI as a business, we'd employ Saudi females before we'd employ Saudi males, because they are totally emancipated now, and they want to be involved, and they're leaning into the whole thing, and they're brilliant. So we're over 60% Saudis, but so Saudi females is our target audience straight away. Jane McGibbon is CEO of the Sports Boulevard, British CEO of a mega, not a giga project, but it's significant. Saudi ambassador to Washington, Dr. Princess Raya, female. Dr. Munira, I think her name is runs the inward investment team for Neil. Female astronaut. First Saudi astronaut was female. It's changed. It's changed. Yeah, it really has. And females should feel perfectly at ease coming to Saudi. Totally at ease.
One more question.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your comments. Maria Bena, one of the long-term Flux launch partners. I run a studio that specializes in interactive technology and generative content, and I apply to installations and performances. Like, it is quite in the art context. So I have two little questions. I was wondering, what is the kind of the art collection market like over there in terms of they're private collectors? If you know anything about that, or I guess art fairs, art collection. I know that question because I also co-run an organization that is focused on educating underrepresented groups within arts and technology. So I guess my question, you answered quite a lot about the female presence, within those business environments. But also, I guess I wanted to ask if there was interest for knowledge transfers and skill training, particularly aimed to females in the art and tech sector.
Something I can jump straight away, because my previous agency before I joined here, the last project I worked on was the Jack Samaka project. So Jack is a region of Riyadh, northeast, I think, northwest, that was a German production facility. And that's our warehouses, I guess, think Shoreditch 30, 40 years ago. And Samaka is a Saudi Arabian Museum of Contemporary Art, which will be built and designed by Jean Nouvel probably 5 years' time. But for now, there's a series of warehouses where they put contemporary art exhibitions in there. All around those spaces, there is free spaces for artists. So you can apply for one of these spaces and you get free studio space for nothing, as long as you go and populate that artist, bring it to life, do what Shoreditch did 30, 40 years ago. They want it to be vibrant, and they're prepared to do it for free or to throw money at it. So I don't know many places in the world that are doing things. What was your first question?
Well, the first question is about, I guess that art collection market, and, is it right, with the part?
Yeah.
You see, because I guess I work in both, I think experience studying.
Yeah.
In schools, and that's kind of solutions, and was on the school in the institution, and museum. So,
yeah.
All that type of sector, or is it private, is it?
Well, we just got a bid in for the Art Biennale in November and December. Hopefully we'll find out about the next couple of weeks to help support that. They do North Festival, which is the biggest light art festival in the world. I mean, I don't know many places, you live there, but I don't know many places in the world that embrace art quite as readily as doing.
You look Desert Edge. You look in El Ula, in the desert, installations in the desert, so they have a lot.
Yeah, I think Abu Dhabi has the Louvre. So Riyadh will go one better if that's possible. Of course it will, in due course. And I'm not joking. I mean, you obviously say it with a smile, but yeah, those sort of outside installations you're talking about, I think that's incredible. But we're talking about a country where this hasn't been on offer before. So it is canvas, and they want it. Yes, there'll be patrons who will say, come, because they'll find you and they'll bring you, or you go to them and say, how about this? They'll say, why not? And this is a population, we talked about the demographic, the age, the numbers. This has never really been exposed to them in that degree before. And so there's an education that's going on, and they'll love it. They'll snap it up because, you know, so much more, as we were talking in the groups earlier on about, we've all come across Saudis in some capacity where we've had a conversation and the youngsters are saying, I'm so proud of my country. I'm so proud, you know, what's happening, the transformation that's taking place. So much more on offer. We talk about emails in the workplace and so on. This is all new. So all these people who are coming out from behind a really sort of nuclear family, well, not nuclear, you know, that sort of concentrated family group, suddenly coming out and being enfranchised and doing new things. Art is no longer the preserve of the high net worth individuals in the Wadi Hanifa. It is now in the public space. And the Sport Boulevard that's going east-west, run by Jane McGibbon, you know, there will be art installations all the way along there. And the Saudis will love it, because there's nothing they love more than a selfie in front of something.
There's just okay. As well, the art and that. There's all the metro stations where have art objects. This is big massive $8 per metro station. So I mean that doesn't happen anywhere else in the world. I'm really sorry, we've got to stop. We're way out of time. Firstly, I want to thank everybody for attending. Thank you so much for coming. Keep an eye on all of our socials for next ones that are coming up. We'd love to have you. I want to thank our panelists. Well done on getting a new proper boss. Must be good for you guys, but thank you both so much for your time. Really appreciate it. I know you're busy and appreciate it for coming. So thank you, everybody. Enjoy the football tonight.